So thank you everyone. Bula from Fiji. My name is Sagufta and I'm the founder for my social enterprise, the Fusion Hub. And just to give you all a bit of background, back in 2016, I think this is when the Fusion Hub essentially started, was my place of calm. I have always been surrounded by the ocean, and my place of calm has always been, going into the ocean and just calming myself and distressing myself. And I was going through a bit of tough times, and I understand some high school students are here as well. So during my high school times, I was often bullied and I was very introvert, and I had to go through a lot of issues, and I had a lot of confidence issues as well. So that was my place of solace. That is where I would go to feel where I actually belonged. So when in 2016, when I went to this dive spot which I used to go when I was a kid, I went in there, and instead of seeing the beautiful marine life which I was really used to, I saw tons and tons of rubbish. It was scattered everywhere. I saw tires, slippers, diapers, sanitary pads, anything and everything you can name it was there on the beach, lying on the shores, just like that, or in the ocean. And then looking at that, so it sort of gave me a sense of realization that I am also part of this problem. I am not doing anything different. I am also, consuming these same products. So what am I doing? And I realized that how my small actions really impacted the greater ecosystem, especially in the marine life. So that is when I decided to personally change my own consumption behavior, because I feel that is the problem. It's not that waste is being created, it's because we have this consumption behavior that really drives us to create these waste that is now pretended in our environment. So I at that point in time, I was moving into a new flat, I remember, into a new apartment in Suva, which is the capital city from where I was, and I created my own furniture pieces. So it was made from old tires. I used cutoffs from got to a garment factory, bought some cutoffs, and eventually used those cutoffs as upholstery for my furniture, and then pallets and everything and anything. So I used those things too and incorporated it into my home. So that sort of caught on, and a few of my friends saw it, a few of the people that I worked with saw it, and they wanted it too. So I started creating these pieces for them. So that's when the business idea eventually caught on, and there came one point in time where I could not focus on my full-time job. So I had to let go of my full-time job and then focus on creating these furniture pieces. And of course, very early on, I tried to get in a bit of funding. And at that point in time, I think a few funding opportunities were also announced. I went in there. I remember sitting in an interview.
Sagufta, what was your full-time job? Just to give a little bit of context.
Oh yeah, I was a business development coordinator for an airline company here in Fiji. So it was a good job. I would have gotten to a very better place, but I decided to pursue this because I felt that this had a larger purpose, and this is what my purpose is. So that is why I decided to leave and pursue entrepreneurship. And yeah, so going back to the issue of trying to access funding. So I went into this pitching competition, I remember, and then the first question they asked me, women creating furniture, what is the quality like? And all of these questions back and forth just because of my gender. And I didn't realize that at that point in time, because I was so passionate about my products and I was so happy about it, I didn't realize that gender could be an issue as well. So I went ahead and I bootstrapped my company from my own personal savings. And eventually what I started doing is, I wanted to prove this misconception where they were saying that women cannot be part of this industry because, you know, it affects the quality of the products because they don't know what they're doing, or they don't understand, or they don't have the necessary capacity to be able to create these products. So what I started doing was I went into a few communities, shared my ideas with them, and then eventually what we did was we identified the resources that they had available and the waste that they had access to, and we started creating things from that. So I started going into, we created a waste to worth capacity building program. And with this capacity building program, we were able to train women on how they can transform waste into goods that they can sell and make money out of. So creating economic opportunities whilst also creating a solution for the environment as well. So that is essentially, you know, what we started doing. That's how it started off, and then it caught on. We had interest from other communities, then it just sort of transpired from that and went on that trajectory. So to be able to you know, go from zero to scratch, it did take us a bit of time because we ourselves, we had to build our own capacity as well. So women's economic participation rate in Fiji is generally at around 37%, and it's fewer in other Pacific Island countries, and only 8% of them are sort of in key leadership roles. So when we designed the Waste to Worth program, it was essentially to build capacity and to create opportunities for these women as well, and give them access to market as well. So these are the two sustainable development goals that we have worked on. We have worked on SDG 5, which is gender equality, and SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. So, of course, we have conducted about 3 training programs. Unfortunately, we had to do more this year, but because of COVID, we were not able to mobilize ourselves into the communities, and it was a bit difficult to go in and access them as well because of the lockdowns and the barrier controls that were in the border controls that were in place. So a lot of our work has always been around you know, it started off from me just creating the furniture pieces on my own, and it went on to going into communities and helping them identify the resources that they have access to. So the other aspect that I wanted to talk about is when we go into our communities, there is a certain level of communication that we need to do prior to actually getting involved in the communities. So before we go into the communities, we do a bit of research around, you know, what are the cultural norms, what are the social norms that they have to follow, what are the resources that they have available. So the first community that we went to, we were linked by an officer from Peace Corps. So she was on the ground all this time working with the community. And we were able to get a lot of information from her. So it's very, very important to keep a connection or keep a network of people prior to going into a community. So you learn about the community beforehand, especially the cultural aspects of things. And I felt that that really helped me identify, or that really helped me prepare for my trips as well when I wanted to go in and conduct these training programs. As essential, because that is an essential part of the program. The other thing is that we were able to identify when we went into the community. The most important part is when you go in there, you should be able to have the capacity to listen, because in Fiji we are very big on talanoa, what we call is sitting around a table or a grog bowl and just, you know, discussing the issues that they have, discussing the resources that they have access to, discussing the resources that they don't have access to. So in these sessions, we are really able to identify what problems that they face, you know, and what are the opportunities that we can tap into. So when you go into these communities, you need to be able to go in with an open mind. We have seen a lot of organizations going into communities, and then them just, having a training program already done and dusted, and then going in there and then training the communities, coming back, which has proved to be unsustainable because they don't resonate with it. They don't resonate with the product that they're making. They don't resonate with the message that you're trying to send them through the training program. So when we are going in there creating these community-based startups, we want to understand that what their problems are. And once we understand the problems, then on the second or the third day, we go in there and we tell them, this is the problem that we want to solve for you. And this is the solution that we have essentially to solve that problem. So if you're saying that you don't have access to income generating opportunities, or you don't have access to, or if they say that they don't have access to markets, they have really great crafters, they have really great weavers, but they don't know how to sell their products, they don't know how to price their products. So these are the problems that they face. And sometimes you see that they are taken advantage of, because people would come in and buy the products for way less, maybe less than what it's worth, like, and then sell it for by 200 times. We saw this happen in a village where a group of people came in and bought a few woven baskets for, I think, $5 a basket, and they sold it to an Australian interior decor company for $300 a piece. So there, the community sort of, they were left out of that profit. They were left out because it was essentially their hard work, and they were not given the right access to the market. They didn't know how to value the products at that point in time. So those were some of the key issues that they were facing. So it is really, really important to identify the issues and then weave that sort of into the story. One of the main things, I think, over the past few weeks, the COP26 conference, has happened, and all of these things have been promised, but the information does not trickle down to the communities. Some of them don't know what COP26 is about. Some of them don't know what the Sustainable Development Goals are about. And they're often missed during these conversations, where they are the ones who are highly, highly impacted, and especially the women. And because when relocation happens due to climate change and climate disasters, they're the ones who are sort of, scattered around looking for families. Their livelihoods are lost. So when we're talking about relocating, we're not just talking about moving people from one home to another, but we're talking about changing their entire livelihood, and creating a sustainable livelihood for them. So this is where entrepreneurship comes in. This is where community-based startups and solutions like a cooperative model comes in. So that is essentially what the Fusion Hub has, tried to do for specifically for these communities who are often displaced due to the climate impacts that we are facing. And I think, Tomo, you asked me to sort of raise a few things about the background of Fiji and what we are sort of doing. So if I could just go on to that.
Yeah, while Sagufta is just switching windows, if you guys have any questions, feel free to write in the chat box. I have already a dozen of questions that I want to ask. Definitely not going to get through everything. But it's so interesting to hear about kind of the the relocation. Yeah, that's already starting to happen. Also, yeah, just the whole piece about community engagement, gender biases that you faced, when you're starting the furniture business. So many things I want to ask, but I'll let you finish your presentation first, and I definitely want everyone to ask.
Basically, why green startups and businesses are important to us is because, first of all, the United Nations has declared access to a clean environment as a basic human right. And with the recent COP26 event, we have seen the Pacific Islanders, especially the Pacific youth, raising their voices to fight against climate change, and creating green businesses is one of the aspects of this fight. So just to take you back to our 2016 tropical cyclone, which sort of caused economic losses that amounted to almost 1/3 of the country's GDP, and it sort of created a potential for even greater damage and displacement for the future. And with the COVID situation that was happening here in Fiji, we lost a lot of opportunities because our tourism tourism market was not working as well. So a lot of people lost their jobs during that point in time. And to encourage sort of sustainable startups to create green and blue economies, Fiji has done a lot in that term. The first thing is that Fiji, being the seventh country in the world and the first small island developing state, has passed a climate legislation act. So it is inclusive of a net zero emission goal. So it indicates to investors the need for green and blue startups in the economy, and why we are, being one of the developing countries, we are now making it as a law that if we don't achieve net zero by 2050, then there is going to be implications. And one of the ways that we need to do is to bring in investment or create more startups in the economy that encourages blue and green businesses here in Fiji. Fiji has also created a green bond, which creates a new way to mobilize finance for development and a market for private sector capital seeking investment opportunities that support climate resilience and adaptation. And at COP26, Fiji also has given a commitment to release a blue bond in 2022 to deliver a sustainable economy and create blue startups and jobs as well. So we also have access to capacity building programs. There is a Greenpreneur Accelerator program. We have the Fiji Enterprise Engine. I was a part of the Fiji Enterprise Engine, and I'm currently mentoring for the Greenpreneur Accelerator program. I was also a part of the WIHA Accelerator program, and the UNDP Youth Collab is also present here in Fiji. And to create further efficiencies in the working environment or to help startups, we have now seen our development partners investing in co-working spaces. And so this was not non-existent in Fiji. Like, look at when I started, there were no co-working spaces. So now we are seeing that there is a startup culture and it's being accepted. And we are being given access to these sort of different levels of resources to be able to use throughout our entrepreneurial journey. Also, another great aspect for communities, especially for community-based startups, is carbon trading opportunities. So this is where communities can, say, for example, do mangrove planting in exchange for funding from a country or a company that's emitting a carbon into the atmosphere to offset that. So there is a lot of opportunity in that area, which we are also exploring. And then, of course, we have also launched the parametric microinsurance for farmers, fishers, and market vendors in Fiji. And the government has also given VAT reductions as incentives for people utilizing these schemes. So there's a lot of opportunities in the green and blue area if we are looking at it from an investment perspective. Our energy company is also investing in 2 solar farms here in Fiji to promote clean energy, especially for private sector and business operations. So, and we're actually now seeing a lot of smaller companies and smaller startups, even fishing villages, using solar powered fridges, for example, solar powered refrigerators, to store their fish. And we are seeing some of the shops and small vendors also, these mom and pop shops now utilizing solar powered refrigerators and solar powered equipment to really as part of their business operations. So there's also a ton of tax incentives on waste management for waste management facilities, and the government has released about, I think, There's opportunities for communities to access the integrated human rights. I think it's integrated human rights development program, where they human resources development program, where they sort of fund a certain aspect of your project, and you're able to. So this is generally for community-based startups when they are looking for funding. And also we have the Young Entrepreneurs Scheme as well. We have the Young Entrepreneurs Council, and I was the Vice-Chairperson for the Young Entrepreneurs Council for 2 years. That's sort of like a community where you are able to engage with young, like-minded people who are also in the business area, in the entrepreneurship space. So apart from that, I think there's a lot of plus points, but we are still sort of finding our way in, and developing this entrepreneurship ecosystem. And there is a lot of work that needs to be done. One of the main things, of course, is our education. Our education system is all about, going out of high schools, going into university, and then finding a job. So it's very job centric. It's not entrepreneurial at all. And that is something that has to change from the ground level. So going back onto Fusion Hub's model, essentially what we are doing is we are creating capacity building programs. And the next step is, once we have so first is we do the needs assessment, we identify the resources that the communities have available. And then the next thing is we try to bring in resources that they don't have access to, and merge them and create an incubation space where they are, testing a few product ideas, creating some products, and then we see the viability of the product. We do a bit of market testing for them. And then once the market testing is done, we then help them create a market access. We help them with their pricing. We help them with marketing the products. We help them with selling it. Once that is done, then we used to actually stop at the market access. But now what we have seen is some of these communities need help further than that. And that is sort of the next phase of our support, where we also now are providing them with back office operations, because we've seen a lot of these accelerator programs. They come in, they do the training, it's great, and then they provide them with the resources if that's part of the program, and then it just goes away. But there is sort of no level of support from then onwards. So what we do is we come in and we try with some of these startups. What we're trying to do is we are helping them with the back office operations, meaning managing their social media, or managing their finances, managing their HR, managing their operations, their policies, their governance structure, all of these things, so that they are not just at one space, but they are continuously growing, and they have a growth plan, they have a strategy plan that they are, and they start, instead of just looking at them as a community-based startup as selling some small handicraft, we want them to become a full-fledged business on their own. And one of the things that we are now moving into is not to focus just on products, but also on services as well. So all of these, most of the community-based startups that we worked with before was all about creating products. But now what we're trying to do is, because we have seen this remote work culture rise from COVID, and we are taking this as an opportunity to create jobs for people here in Fiji and link them to customers in Australia and New Zealand. So basically, one of the services that we have started doing is a virtual assistant service. So this is essentially an outsourcing kind of product. It's very, very famous. It's very popular, I think, in the Philippines market as well. So we do have a very thriving outsourcing industry here in Fiji, and because of our infrastructure and our, the people that we have here, everyone knows in Fiji you get exceptional service from the people. So we're trying to leverage that off and creating these new digital kind of opportunities.
Sagufta, we can't hear you anymore.
Yeah, we lost you.
Are you
So
back?
yeah, so
Okay.
I guess
Oh, you're back.
it's a few things. Sorry, can you hear me? I can't hear
Yeah,
you.
you're back. You're back. No worries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So where did I go off?
Just a few seconds. You were just talking about
Okay.
virtual assistants, and then you were saying you hear just a few things that you're working on.
Yeah. So what we started doing is, now we're also working on a freelancer marketplace platform as well here in Fiji. And there's a lot of opportunities that we're trying to tap into. The basic gist of it is that we're trying to create economic opportunities for people living in these communities that would normally not have these levels of access. And the best way to do it is, go in there, talk to them, ask what their needs are, what resources they have available to them, what the gaps are, and then you sort of, as a company, as a social enterprise, we try to address these gaps, and then we try to get them the capacity building opportunities or the resources that they need, and then we connect them to the market. So we stopped at that before, but now what we're doing is, whilst we have connected them to the market, we ensure that their businesses are sustainable for the long run, and that they have the level of support they need to excel. Because in a recent some of these startups, they fail because they don't have the right backend support, and that is essentially why we started to provide that service as well. So there's a continuity. Yeah, so I think that's it from me. I've taken a bit of time, and I would love to answer a few questions, Tomo, if that's okay.
Great, thank you, Sagufta. Great. Well, I hadn't heard you talk about your work in this much detail, so I myself learned actually a lot. And so, thank you so much to so many questions in my mind. And I'm just wondering which one I should start with. I guess the first one might be, you. It sounds like there's definitely a strong need for green and blue startups in Fiji, and it sounds like there's a lot of momentum towards that in terms of the legal, in terms of the investments, in terms of people interested. And I think the important thing in this kind of phase is to have success cases, right? Or sort of successful models for people to be inspired by. Do you feel like Fiji or other Pacific islands have good, successful social enterprises that are, financially viable and creating social impact so that people can aspire to become like them?
Yes, definitely. We definitely do have a few examples. There's one that I can think of, which is Rise Beyond the Reef Fiji. They also work with a lot of communities. There's a lot of cooperatives that have come up that are earning a lot and are quite sustainable. And there's a lot of success stories, but it's not, how do you say, it's not shared. So they're not out there. They are successful
Right.
startups, but I feel like the messaging is missing, where we're not able to share their success stories as much as how it's done in the international organizations.
Yeah, right. Cool. Yeah, feel free to write in your questions in the chat box, and I'll get you to ask your question on mic. So yeah, feel free to use the chat box. I'm just going back to your story about creating furnitures on your own. Like, why furniture in the first place? Like, what made you interested in creating furnitures? What was the trigger?
So my trigger was that I didn't want to buy anything. I was just seeing all of these things in the landfills and seeing everything just around everywhere. I just felt like that, if I buy something more, I become part of the problem. So because you usually have these leather sofas and all of these things being sold here, but I felt that that just added to the problem, and I wanted to change that. And then I was like, why don't I do it myself? I actually started off creating a pet bed for my pet. I remember a cat that I had, and I made it out of a tire. And then I saw a few ideas here and there, and I started creating things from the tire. So that's when I realized that I can create my own furniture pieces for my home. And yeah, so that's how it worked out for me.
Great. Maybe I just saw Ira post her question. Ira, do you want to come on video and ask your question?
Sure. Hi, Sagufta and everyone. Thank you for sharing such a cool initiative. And I really like the catchphrase of think outside the trash. I think it's a very cool one. But I hear a lot of people saying that once we give value to waste, like what you did, like upcycling them, then there's starting this supply and demand mechanism. Then people tend not to reduce waste because, this waste is making money. Like we have some similar initiative as well in Indonesia, like a waste bank, for example. So I would just like to know whether has this ever crossed your mind, or have you have any plan to mitigate this? So would love to know your thought on that. Thank you so much.
That would be such a great problem to have. Honestly, if people stop creating waste, I honestly feel that is going to be such a great problem to have. So apart from transforming waste, second part of this thing that we do is something that I didn't mention, is that we are now also selling sustainable products. With the recent plastic ban that has happened in Fiji and the styrofoam ban, there's a lot of requirement for eco-friendly products, eco-friendly packaging materials. We have also started selling menstrual cups as well. So we're now trying to create this zero waste space as well, where we are bringing in alternatives, or we're creating alternatives for people to switch from their, the waste creation methods to now, buying things that are more sustainable and that they can, use for a longer period of time. So we knew that, we would love to have for this problem to happen, but at the back end we knew that we needed to create a second sort of revenue stream, or a third revenue stream, to come in and mitigate that risk that you were just talking about. So, and then of course now, because now we are also going into services as well, providing services, so that is also another way that we are still creating jobs, but in sort of other spaces, in the digital space. So the economic opportunities are still there, but yeah, so that is how we are trying to sort of mitigate the problem. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, great. Thank you for sharing. I think, yeah, you're right. Like seeing it as an ecosystem is very important. So not only like upcycling, but then also tackling the zero waste part. I think that's a very cool initiative. So hopefully you could really scale it to a very big business one day. Really looking forward to hear about that.
Definitely. That's one of my aims.
Sagufta, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit and ask about COP26, which you've raised. And I know it was a pretty disappointing and depressing outcome for a lot of countries, but especially for climate vulnerable countries like Fiji. What has been the impact, or at least the sentiment in the green startup ecosystem, as a result of what the discussions that took place or that didn't take place at COP26?
Yeah, I think what these emitting countries fail to understand is that we are not just asking for funding to relocate, like as I shared this, right? We are not just asking for funding to relocate, but we are asking for funding to be able to support livelihoods, because when you're asking a village to relocate, they lose their land, they lose their resources, they lose the access to, the marine life that they lived off of as well, to create a sustainable livelihood for themselves. So when we are talking about these initiatives, when we are talking about access to financing, climate financing, we are also inclusive of the community's livelihoods and not just giving them a place to stay, but how are they going to sustain themselves in the long run? So all of these things were not sort of, acknowledged. I mean, of course, our Pacific champions, those who were there, they raised this issue time and again, but it was not recognized or taken seriously. So it was very, very disappointing to see that happen. And yeah, it's very emotional at the same time, because it's not just a commitment or something that's written on paper. It's actually people's life. People are dying because of the natural disasters, and people are losing their families. So it's really, really a sad thing to see that humanity hasn't prevailed, I feel, because if people were human enough, or they really thought about our lives, and if it's important, then they would have just, without any hesitations, why are these negotiations taking place anyway? Why do we have to fight for our lives? Why is it even an issue? So
Yeah.
it's really, really disappointing, to be honest. Yeah.
Carol, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, Sagufta, thank you so much. So inspiring what you're doing. And I mean, and touching in this subject that you said, I mean, I'm from São Paulo, Brazil, and when we had, and whenever we were talking about water consumption and people need to take care of that, people never really take care until actually we had a water shortage, and we had to, learn how to deal with it, because the water will go in a city with 20 million people. There's going to be 4 hours per day that you have water in your house. And then all of a sudden we've seen this kind of transformation in the mindset of people there, because, I mean, unfortunately, they had to get into this situation. And I wonder, how is the youth in Fiji, in terms of mindset, and the country in general, because I know that people that are fighting for the environment, they are raising these questions. But do you feel that it's also a shift on mindset on the people that are living on these islands? Like,
I'd say we're definitely getting there, especially the young people. We see how resilient that they have become. And you see most of these social enterprises are, being started off by these young people and individuals. So you see that there is definitely a change from that end, but it has to go beyond that, I feel, because people are still not recognizing how waste is linked to climate change. There's a lot of impacts, because there's land, there's a lot of emissions, the greenhouse gases in landfills, there's methane gases, which is more potent than CO2 emissions. So these are the things, the technicalities that we really need to be educating about. We really need to be talking about a lot more, especially within the communities, because it's a surprising thing, because when we're in the urban centers, and a lot of support is only, and a lot of these talks and messaging is only happening in the urban areas. It does not trickle down to the rural communities, the people who are actually impacted. So there needs to be a lot of conversation, a lot of capacity that needs to happen, so that they are also, included in these conversations, and they are so that they are able to change there. So for Fusion Hub, what we're trying to create is a mindset that people need to reduce their consumption behavior. It's not about just reducing waste, it's about improving the consumption behavior that we have. So that is the mindset that we are trying to change from our end. And we've seen a lot of difficulty in terms of adaptability. We have a lot of international clients and customers, but in Fiji, our market is very, very small, because people are not willing to sort of change or switch. It's very difficult for them to, to get them to switch. So I think it is a journey, but we need to do a lot of capacity around it. Yeah.
Thank you. And just so another question that I got interesting as well, because when you talk about these accelerator programs and helping people to start to start their business and all the support that you guys give to them, do you guys also help them to find microloans and to find money to start those business? Is there a system for that as well, like to get financial support for startups?
Yeah, so part of it is that once we do their market testing and the viability, we have some set of, a certain set of data, so we can present to these financial institutions and to potential investors, donors. And so once they go in with a certain level of data, a proper pitching document, and they're trained on how to pitch their product, they are able to get that. But right now, especially loans, financial products, it is a very difficult thing to access for the micro and small businesses here, unless you have a collateral, like if you have land or a house or a property, that is the only way you'd be able to get a loan. But if you don't have anything and just your business idea and your financials, it's very, very difficult. I was not able to get a loan. I still have not been able to get a loan, actually. So
yeah, that's interesting. I want to connect you with like a parent here in the Green School community that has started a bank for microloans for women. I'll connect you with him because it's interesting part and an important part of the equation. Yes, is to actually help these startups. But it's amazing the work that you're doing. It's so inspiring.
Thank you. We had this conversation with the UNCDF. I was part of the discussions, I think, 2 days ago. And what I raised was that it's not just for the businesses, but it's also for entrepreneurs as well. I can't get a credit card because I don't have a full-time employment contract. So, it's financial inclusion for entrepreneurs is also an issue here. It's a major issue, because that sort of deters the young people to go into entrepreneurship, because they're like, oh, I won't have access to this product, I won't have access to this opportunity because I don't have a full-time contract. So it's an issue and it deters them. And nobody talks about this for financial inclusion for entrepreneurs, not just their businesses. I mean, getting a business bank account is another issue, but getting now also for a personal bank account, you need to have an employment contract, or someone has to be your guarantor so that you can have a personal bank account. So that is also an issue. And another issue in terms of financial products, when we want to trade digitally, especially for my business Polar Lens, we cannot access payment gateways. We don't have payment gateways to accept online transactions. So our clients have to do an online transfer to our bank account, which deters them, because platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, they have that access. So rather than coming to us, they would go to them. So we lose them there. And to be able to have a payment gateway, you need to have thousands of dollars in your bank account to, as deposit to get that access. So there's a lot of opportunities, but there are also a lot of barriers as well that we have to overcome to create more economic opportunities here.
Great. I just have one final question before we start wrapping up. You're clearly a trailblazer in this Fiji green startup ecospace and entrepreneurship ecospace. And I think you play such an important role for this generation of young entrepreneurs trying to make a difference. I'm just wondering what your parents or that generation think of you. Do they think you're totally crazy? And do they think that you should just be on a path of, working for a big company and have a successful, quote unquote, successful career? Or do they see value in your work at the moment? Because I can see it being a challenge to fully understand from their perspective.
Definitely was, because my siblings are all in really good corporate jobs, and my mom was single mother, is a single mom. So she wanted me, to get out of university, get a full-time job and, stay there, go into management roles or something like that. So for me to take this step was like a big no from my family. They were like, no, don't go into business. It's not a good idea. Don't do this. But when I started sort of getting the recognition and, when I started getting into spaces, and then I saw the shift happen. I saw how proud that they were, that I was, doing things for the community. I was helping people. I was being, especially after the Commonwealth Youth Award. So from my family, I would be the only one sort of having that kind of
public recognition.
Exposure. And the public recognition. So so that sort of made them proud, and now they don't question it. So I feel like you have to keep going. Don't, they will eventually change their mind, so just keep going.
Interestingly, it was same with my dad. He didn't understand what I was doing for probably the first 10-15 years of my career, and it's only in the last few years when our organization started to receive awards or get into newspaper articles. That's huge for that generation, right? If your children's work is actually cited in hard copy newspaper, they're like, oh, that must be a good thing, So I'm really glad that their perception is changing and they're accepting and valuing your work. So that makes a huge difference for you and this generation to really be able to engage in this work.
Exactly.
So awesome. Well, thanks so much, Sagufta. I wish we could continue this conversation. But maybe we can just end with one thing of Sagufta. If there's anything that we can do as an audience, very highly engaged audience who want to help you out in any way, if there's one or two or three things that you would like us to do, that would be great.
Okay. First of all, if you could, I would like to connect with all of you, so you could all add me on my LinkedIn. I think it was shared as well.
Yeah, I shared it earlier. I'll share it again.
So you could add me on your LinkedIn, and if there are any points of collaboration that you feel your organization and our organization could do together, then I would definitely be keen on listening to that. But just feel free to reach out and follow our work, and if there is any way that you'd like to support us or help us with our work, then please reach out to me. And thank you so much for your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sagufta. Well, I'm sure everyone will reach out to you by LinkedIn.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And one thing I just want to ask is just to make one change in your consumption behavior today. So if you are, buying bottled water, maybe switch to a reusable cup or something else. Just make that one change from today. It's not for us, but it's for our future generations.
For sure. Back to you, Carol.
Thank you, Tomo. Thank you, Sagufta. That's amazing, super inspiring. And definitely, I've already reached out for you on LinkedIn, and definitely we're going to keep connected. And thank you so much for the work that you do for you and for everybody. And I'm leaving the room very, very inspired by your power, by your determination, by your inspiration, by everything that you've been doing. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Carol and Tomo. Thank you.
Thank everybody for coming here. Thank you for those who come today here as well. Have a beautiful day, everyone.